right, so we are recording. Everybody, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. Glad to see as many faces as I do today. Hope everybody had a happy, healthy, safe Christmas, New Year's, everything. We're able to at least do something as this pandemic seems to ramp back up, not down. There's not a ton to go over tonight. Not a lot that's been going on. I'll hit the highlights. I mean, it's not that nothing has been going on, but of significant issues, which I know is first and foremost on people's minds, the diocese, there's not much going on there. So what I'll start with saying is as of, I think it was a couple of days ago, it was the last financial report I received. We had in total for the plan about 83 million, a little bit north of 83 million. Close to $84 million. Everything from the financial standpoint in terms of benefits, as well as performance of the investments is moving along relatively at the same exact clip. The monthly outlay is about the same, slightly less than $1 million a month. And then the investment income is offsetting that to the tune of it's been about maybe about 3/4 of that annual outlay is what we've been getting back in investment income. So we're burning somewhere in the vicinity of about $3 or $4 million a year when we take the benefit payments over a 12-month period versus the investment income over that same 12-month period. Our net is a negative about $4 million. I'll answer the first two big questions first, then I'll get into the smaller details of what actually has been going on. So there have been no further discussions with the diocese. As you probably all recall, we did have what was scheduled to be a 3-day mediation session at the end of September 21, beginning of October. We got through the first day and the mediator suspended the mediation, determining that we were so far apart and that a further day or two was not going to make any difference. That hasn't changed. We have not re-engaged in mediation. We haven't discussed dates. What has happened, hold on 1 second. Okay. So what has happened is we had, I guess I'll just put it this way. There has been some, what I will term some exotic motion practice going on in the federal court with the diocese. Right now, we have they have filed and we have responded to a motion to dismiss certain claims a summary judgment on certain claims. There has been no date yet scheduled for those hearings, but the briefing has been done. There have been some conferences with Judge Smith over in federal court, but no hearings, nothing of substance has resulted from that other than what you've seen posted to the website in the federal court matter. Those are the pleadings that have been filed, but no arguments have been had. And there has not been a conference before Judge Smith unless my memory is not serving me properly, in over a month. Part of that is due obviously to the holidays. Once the calendar hits December, a lot of people start to lighten up their calendars, and the courts, both state and federal, take a break during those last 2 weeks of December. So there's not much going on. The other main issue that I'm sure people would have questions about is the PBGC. Everything there is status quo, meaning we continue to provide them with every single document that's filed in both the receivership matter, the federal litigation, as well as the liquidating receiverships. I have not received any communications from them in quite some time now. They're probably about due to ask me for another update on what's going on, which they do, I'd say, at least once a year, if not twice a year. But we haven't heard anything from them in quite some time either. And last we heard is as the same thing, as they wanted some information. They were taking we're going to sit back and wait and see what happens approach with the diocese and the litigation going on in federal court. So those are kind of the three big things: how much money we have, the diocese, and the PBGC. In addition to that, I have mentioned before, as you're all aware, there's a liquidating receivership going on also in state court. Tom Hemmendinger is the liquidating receiver. He is the liquidating receiver for what I'll refer to as the legacy hospitals, the old St. Joe's and the old Roger Williams, essentially what was left behind by Prospect after the sale. We had a receiver appointed, a liquidating receiver appointed for those entities to wind them up. There were some monies that were still held and some pledges in connection with our settlement with the legacy hospitals back in, now I guess it's 2018, 2019. And that matter is still going on. There are a number of avenues of money available there in addition to what the receiver is holding that would be for the benefit of this plan. In addition to that, and I won't get too far into the weeds unless somebody asks a question of me on this, like in any receivership, there are claims in a receivership. We have claims. The pension plan is a claimant in the liquidating receivership. So we have a claim. The amount has not been conclusively determined by the court, but in the settlement that we entered into with the legacy hospitals, it was identified to be no less than $125 million. In addition to our claim, there have been other claims made by the Department of Environmental Management for the state, the Department of Labor and Training, and Beacon Insurance. And then there are some other legacy litigation claims that are going on, old litigation claims that were pending at the time of both my appointment and the liquidating receiver's appointment that need to be dealt with. If the receiver were to make a distribution today, those claims would have to be resolved by the court. What we are trying to do, and some of them are significant, I believe the DEM, at least what they have asserted, is north of $50 million. And what we are trying to do, myself, Max Wistow and his team, in conjunction with the liquidating receiver, is to compromise those claims, which means get rid of them. Kind of work it out among those claimants so that either they can get some payment, small amount payment to go away, so resolve their claim for a small dollar amount, or just resolve it. We recently, subject to Judge Stern's approval, which I hope we will be able to get on his calendar, if not in January and February, we have resolved the claim that Beacon and Department of Labor and Training have filed in that case. We've resolved it with no money for them and no money out by us. So it eliminates that claim. The liquidating receiver, nor the liquidating receiver or me as plan receiver are going to be paying anything to them. And it's a settlement which really speaks about the takeover of claims and kind of a walk away for any disputes regarding any monies that are owed back and forth. We believed they owed money to us. They believed we owed money to them. And so rather than fight it out and spend tens of thousands of dollars arguing, with the possible recovery being equal to what we're spending to argue, we just resolved it. Once the court approves that, which I have no reason to believe Judge Stern won't, then that will leave just, I believe, 2 more claims in the liquidating receivership that need to be resolved. The result of all of this is, the significance of all of this is, if we are able to resolve those claims amicably with those parties, then the plan will be the only claimant in the liquidating receiver, which would mean that the plan would be the only creditor entitled to a distribution in that receivership. The receiver is currently holding somewhere in the vicinity of about $1.2, $1.3 million in cash, and then there are other assets that need to be liquidated. So if we are the only claimant, with the efforts that myself, Max, and the liquidating receiver are taking, it could be an additional anywhere from $2 million to best case scenario upwards of close to $10 million of recovery for the plan. And that's separate and apart from any of the litigation at federal court. So that is significant, but it's bits and pieces, and it's smaller issues that need to be dealt with. My hope is that we get all of those outstanding issues with those other claimants and the liquidating receivership resolved by the latest, the mid part of this year, and then close that receivership out and have those monies distributed to me as the plan receiver to go in the plan to benefit you guys. That's the best case scenario. That's what I'm hoping for. Hopefully it can happen sooner than that. I know Max and his people and I are working very, very hard to move it along as quickly as possible. And I think that by June, that's a realistic, conservative, but realistic estimate of when that can be completed. And like I said, that could potentially result in anywhere from a couple of million into the plan, upwards of maybe about $7 or $8 million into the plan. Beyond that, there hasn't been much that has been happening. Most of my efforts at this point in time, other than the day-to-day administration of the plan, have been along with Wistoshin and Lovely to try to get those issues resolved in the liquidating receivership, so that those monies can come in. Based on that, that's a summary of everything that's going on, and I am happy to take any questions or comments from anybody. Everybody's on mute, so if you cannot unmute yourself, raise your hand, wave your hands, do something to get my attention, and I'll unmute you. I see. Here we go. I just asked you to unmute. There you go.
Hi, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you too.
I'm just wondering when all this, you see this as being a final thing. This has been on for such a long time. As far as the church, we see them dragging their feet. Who finally gets to push them ahead and make things happen? What happens going forward?
Yeah, well, there are really two paths this can take. I guess there's three paths that can take, because there's one path, which is a quicker resolution, which would be for us to, once the motions for summary judgment that they filed are heard, and assuming, regardless of whether they're denied or granted, that would put everybody, and that's what the mediator believed, everybody will be in a better position to mediate at that point because there are those open issues. And mediation will generally, as it did with Prospect and as it did with the old St. Joe's, well, actually, we didn't mediate with the old St. Joe's. It'll result in settlement. And that's obviously the quickest path, is to get to a settlement. If we don't, the other path is litigation. And unfortunately, that path is a long, drawn out and exhausting path. I would probably say in federal court, if you take the speed in which things have been moving, and I guess I will say the crafty lawyering that can be done on the side of the diocese, that this could go on for 3, 4, maybe even 5 years in litigation. And that's not because the judge is not moving things along or we're not. It's just the process by which things happen, and with all of the complex issues that are going on, that's just about how long it will take. A hybrid of those two is to start down the litigation path and then ultimately get to a point where the parties say it's not worth it to fight this anymore, let's try to settle it. So it could be short-circuited as you go down litigation with mediation.
Is it more likely it will be us saying that rather than them?
That we say enough is enough, let's mediate?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Quite frankly, I think, I've had those discussions with Wistoshin and Lovely, Max Wistow and his team. And we are hopeful that we can if we come to a resolution, that we can do that, or that we can come to one. But we're prepared to go all the way because we have confidence in the claims that we have against the diocese. I don't think it's any surprise that any defendant, and the diocese is not the exception here, especially one that has incentive to not dig into their pocket to pay more, would rather pay their attorneys to avoid any type of liability than they would to go into their pocket and pay it out, unless you're talking a de minimis amount to pay out a settlement.
Doesn't the judge frown on the fact that they tried the mediation and weren't receptive at all to that? I mean, does that not play a hand in pushing things forward? I mean, I know nobody in the judiciary is working now. I mean, nurses are the only ones that work. Yeah. And we're the ones that aren't being compensated down the line.
I wish I could tell you. I wish I could tell you that I knew what the judge thought of and what the judge's perception of of the failure on mediation or anything like that is I don't know what the judge knows. I don't know if the mediator has spoken to the judge or not and given his input and observations based on the mediation. I do know in some conferences that Judge Smith has expressed frustration with the way that this is progressing and the lack of the parties to come to an agreement. Quite frankly, I don't think it's a secret that most judges would rather the parties resolve it rather than force the judge to make a decision on it.
Mhm.
And I think this is the same exact thing. Judge Smith, not because he's afraid to or incapable of doing it, but judges prefer, especially in business disputes like this, that the parties actually resolve their own differences without requiring a ruling from the bench. So, you know, at
That's
some
not going to
point,
happen, right? I mean, that's not likely.
well, generally speaking, I would say it's not likely. But just going on history of what the diocese typically does in their litigation, they do not usually fold up their tent and walk away early. They usually fight it until the end. And, you know, although this is not the same as some of the other legal issues that they fought over the years, I don't see them really conceding any liability here or acknowledging liability at this point in time. Maybe they will in 6 months, maybe they will in a year, but right now they are as deeply entrenched into their belief that they are correct as we are. And so I don't see them picking up anytime soon unless we get to a mediation and it makes business sense to do so.
Is there anything further that you can do to
Um,
move along?
You know, from my standpoint, I'm obviously one of the parties who is I'm a plaintiff in that litigation, just like you guys are. So I can't do much, and neither can Max. But I do know independently the groups that are represented by Arlene and the union and Jeff Castle. You know, they can do what they feel is appropriate to do to exert some pressure or to exert some influence, whatever that means. Although I never want to know about what's going on, I'm always there to applaud any efforts to try to move the needle a little bit on this one to make things happen.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Anybody else?
John Brigette.
Hey, John.
If the motions for summary judgment
Yeah.
Do not resolve the issue, is there going to be any further discovery necessary?
There is a lot of discovery keep in mind the discovery that we did, John, back in 17 and 18 was really what the judge allowed us to do. As you know, it's atypical to do discovery before you actually file a complaint. But because of the circumstances here, the judge allowed us to do, in essence, discovery to determine if we had any grounds to file a complaint. So we conducted some substantial discovery of all the parties, of all the defendants at that time. But now that we're in litigation, and since we've been in litigation, there has been virtually no discovery done. There hasn't been any requested of us going back, or at least nothing that has been dealt with at this point, or vice versa. So, and I'm not going to say, and Max would shoot me if I did say it, so I'm not going to say it, that we are done and we've got everything we need. We got everything that we needed in order to determine that there were claims that we could assert. But in terms of now, once the complaint has been crafted and basically narrowing those down based on the counts that we've raised and the allegations we've raised in the complaint, we still have more discovery to do, depositions, things of that nature. And the other side, in this case, the diocese, I think would be saying the same exact thing. There's a lot of discovery, depositions, documents, interrogatories, things that need to be done at this point that have not been done yet. Because of our ability to enter into settlements with CCF and the legacy hospitals and most recently Prospect, the judge has really kind of said, okay, as you are resolving these things, I'm not going to push this litigation along. Now we're left with the diocese, and the judge did try. There was a recommendation to go to mediation, and we did. And so far, it has been unsuccessful. So now we're moving along in the litigation process. Hopefully, like I said, a favorable or unfavorable decision by a judge here or there will sway the pendulum to go back to mediation, hopefully.
But on a practical basis, if it's necessary, there'll be a substantial delay in any actual trial if there's no settlement.
Did you say if there is a settlement?
If there is no settlement, there'll be a substantial delay.
If there is no settlement, then you can rest assured that we, as well as the diocese, will be doing everything and anything that we can. We'll be doing whatever we can to move it along and to maximize our case as much as possible. And you can imagine that the diocese will do anything they can to delay it and undermine our case as much as they can. So that's why I say you're really looking at, if going today, you're really looking at least at a minimum another 2 years, but you could be going 3, 4, maybe even more than that, depending on how things go. And that's from a litigation standpoint. I mean, the good thing is we've settled with everybody other than the diocese, and we've gotten money into, I guess I'll call it re-support the plan. Like I said, we have another accessible amount of cash that we should be collecting as a result of the liquidating receiverships that will further bolster. But then once that's done, we'll be dealing with the diocese and the diocese alone. And the question is what is there an hour tolerance for proceeding down the litigation path?
So you don't know what the assets of the diocese are?
I do not know. We haven't done any discovery on that yet, so I don't know. I mean, I can surmise just like you, but I do not have any information regarding what their assets are.
Thank you.
All right, thanks. Motion, let me, you're unmuted. You there?
Okay, as I mentioned 2 meetings ago, I have, when I received the amended plan, there was no place for identifying the beneficiary, and I talked to you, and you told me that you're following it. Meanwhile, I have talked to Ms. Kristen Stafford.
Yep, down at GRS.
Right, and
Yep.
I've never really got any answer. Many times I called her, but then after a while, my daughter has called her or talked to, emailed her, and she responded. But after that, there is nothing more I have got.
Are you looking to add or change a beneficiary motion?
No change. Initially, my beneficiary was one of my daughter who is disabled, you know, and I that's what I like to get a form that I could identify her again as a beneficiary.
Okay, what I'm going to do is I think I saw Julie on this call. I do see her name on there. And so I'm assuming Julie just heard you, and I'm going to have her reach out to Kristen and then have Kristen reach out to you or your daughter so that we can possibly resolve that issue for you. That should be relatively easy to resolve. So I'm probably not as frustrated as you, but I am frustrated to hear that it has not been resolved yet.
So this is Lisa, the other daughter. There, you do need to change the beneficiary.
You have to identify it. There is no
beneficiary
change.
now.
No change yet.
Okay. So I'll, like I said, Julie, who is my paralegal, who most of you know, if not all of you know, I'm going to ask her to reach out to Kristen and see what needs to be done so we can get that taken care of for you.
Okay. thank you.
And just, she did respond to my email saying, could you please send a form or a link or wherever to designate a beneficiary? And she responded by asking if he was currently receiving benefits, but
Okay,
it shouldn't do anything else. And then I said, yes, but this is for survivor benefits.
okay,
And then I never heard back from her again. on the
okay.
email.
All right, so
Good.
we'll reach out and we'll try to figure that out for you.
And Julie, could you send in the chat, could you send your email?
Sure, I'll send it right now.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Jules. Anybody else have any questions?
I'd like to ask a question if I can.
Sure.
John Marco.
Hi, John, how are you?
Good, thank you. What I was trying to draw on is that Pension Benefit Guaranty Corporation. What I was trying to remember if the retirement plan is still considered a church plan or it no longer is.
Well, that's the $1 million question, John. The plan was, how do I put this? Prior to my appointment, the plan considered itself and acted as if it was a church plan. We have argued in the litigation that it was not a church plan, not only at the time of my appointment, but for many, many years prior to that. Just to erase any doubt as to the status of this plan as a church plan or an ERISA plan, I made an election as church plans can do to be covered by ERISA. Once I did that election to be covered by ERISA then triggers a time frame, although from what I am told by our special counsel, who's the former head legal counsel of PBGC, that time frame, there's a 5-year phase-in time frame for the PBGC to consider you fully vested, I'll call it, into the ERISA plan status. It's unclear as to when that time frame actually starts. Needless to say, I believe, unless I'm getting my dates wrong because it's been a while, I believe we made the election in 19 and asked for it to be retroactive back a couple of years. I think we could go back 2 years. And even if we use the 19 date, we're in 2022 now. And so that means we're in about 3 years and we have about 2 years left. What that means is that phase in is obviously the PBGC says you can't just elect and then be covered 100% in day one. So that 5-year phase in is essentially for the first 5 years, the amount that the PBGC will cover, the percentage of benefits that'll cover, goes up each year until you get to year 5, and then you're 100% covered up to their limits. If they agree with you that it's a church plan. Now, like I said, our argument will be that it was a church plan well before August of 2017 when I was appointed. But like I said, to erase any doubt, I made the election so that we could start the ball rolling on the phase-in piece as well, in the event that we end up being wrong or the federal court doesn't ever make a decision or a determination as to when exactly this plan ceased being a church plan. That's probably a lot more information than maybe you wanted. I'm happy to clarify anything I just said if it was confusing. But in essence, we're arguing that we're taking the PBGC coverage argument to 2 different fronts. One in the litigation to say it was well prior to 2017, sometime in the mid 2000s is the date that we put. I think it's 08, somewhere around there, 07 to 08. But at the very least, like I said, we became an ERISA plan, which was eligible for PBGC coverage once I made the election in 19.
See, that's good news to me because you got it in the pipeline, and around 2024, we would hopefully be fully covered by the guarantee plan. And subsequent to that, if in the future of that, the fund became not fully funded, would we then have relief from the guarantee fund to keep it?
You should, and I'll say this, the plan is not fully funded right now. Obviously, at the time, 2014, it was 92% funded, but we've obviously dropped substantially since then. In the past 8 years, there hasn't been any money other than the settlement money that's come in. So the plan is not fully funded, but you are right, is that if everything goes the way it should go, no, regardless of whether the court gives an adverse decision on when the plan became a church plan or a positive one or no decision, we made the election as of 19, and this plan should be fully protected, in my opinion, although the PBGC may disagree with this, but in my opinion, should be fully protected by 2023, 2024, with all of the beneficiaries getting, in this case, and I haven't looked at it in a while, but I think this number is correct. I believe there are only 2 pension holders that were receiving benefits that were only slightly, a couple of $1,000s above the PBGC limit. So what that means is that all of you would be able to receive 100% of your benefits, because the PBGC covers up to, I think it's, as of right now, I don't know if it's changed with COVID, but it's, as of right now, I believe it's $67,000 or $68,000 per year.
Wow, that's good news.
All right, so I'm hopeful that our efforts, both litigation wise as well as with regard to the election, have put us in the best position, regardless of what happens.
Yes, and that's why I was glad you covered that, because I had lost track of whether it was actually considered guarantee pension supported or still a church plan. But regardless, 2024 and afterwards will be in a much better place. And I think the only part related to that I was still hanging on to was so long, well, as long as we continue being 100%, well, not, we're still able to pay out 100% like we currently are, we are fine. And then if it becomes less than 100% after 2024, then that difference could possibly come from the guaranteed pension fund to keep.
Yeah, what would happen, and again, this is a summary, and this is all subject to, obviously, we're kind of building the plane as we're flying it here in terms of what we've done with the PBGC,
Yes.
because this plan was in distress at the time we made an election, which nobody's ever done before.
Exactly.
So the argument is that at whatever point the PBGC takes over, you and your fellow pension holders would be entitled to up to the limit of their annual amount per pension holder, which, like I said, is about 67 to 68 million. So if your pension was 68,000. So if your pension was $40,000 a year, the PBGC would be able to pay out 100% of that 40,000. If your pension was $75,000 a year, then you would get up to the limit, which is 67, 68, and you'd lose that $6,000-7,000 a year, $8,000 a year. Obviously, that's what I believe should happen. The PBGC hasn't said one way or the other whether they agree with us on that. And like I said, they're kind of sitting back, waiting to see what happens with the diocese. In essence, I think what they're doing is they're saying, you go ahead and litigate and fight and settle and do whatever you have to do. Then once you have all of the money that you can collect, then we will look at the plan and make a determination as to when this plan is eligible for coverage. And every dollar that we spend paying out benefits is another dollar that they're going to have to pump into it. So, there's 2 arguments: is the more money we put in, the better it is for the PBGC. The longer we pay out benefits, the better it is for the PBGC, because the plan's that much further along. But on the flip side, the longer we pay out benefits, the less money we're going to have, and they're going to have to pony up more money sooner. If we go like 5 years out, they're going to have to pony up they use the funds that are in the plan now to pay out benefits. And then once those are exhausted, then they start paying them out.
Right. And that the current trend appears that we may be okay to get us to the 2024 period. When
Yes.
guarantee fund would kick in for the difference if necessary. And the only other part I was trying to dwell on was, obviously, it's a long haul fight with the diocese and very difficult to motivate them. What I was trying to get to is these expected future sex abuse scandals, when that starts hitting the diocese, would they be behind our pending litigation? Or could they possibly get in our way?
That is, that's a difficult question. As you can imagine, any of the plaintiffs in those cases are going to be arguing that they should be upfront. Certainly depending on the time frame by which the allegations of injury occurred. And obviously we'll be arguing that we've been fighting with them already. At the end of the day, what it really comes down to is who gets to a resolution first. So obviously, if we are able to settle with them before any of those cases can, then we would be entitled to the money because it hasn't been earmarked or subject to judgment at that point. So if these cases start coming in on additional cases against the diocese unrelated to this pension, then it really becomes an issue of timing. I mean, John Burgett's question of do we know what the diocese has for assets? That's a question where, we might ask if once we find that out, if we become concerned that those assets are insufficient, then we may take action to see if we can secure some of them for the benefit of this plan.
Good point. Because, my expectation is there'll be enough sex scandal things to possibly bankrupt the diocese. And I'm hopeful that we're there before that and we get our fair share first.
As am I. And by the way, that all, those are all factors that come into making a decision as to how to push along in litigation. You don't want to keep pushing along for years if the ultimate chance of recovery is low to nothing.
Right.
I don't want to get the pension plan a paper judgment against the diocese. I want to get the money to get into this plan.
Agreed.
So we're going to do whatever we can to get this resolved as quickly as we can and get the money that the plan deserves.
Right. And back to the September point about the mediation that did attempt, and I'm hopeful that there is some way to pressure it into mediation again, and that there's no choice but to make some progress. And it's sad that they just got to walk away basically from that September attempt.
Well, let me make sure we all walked away because the mediator said it's not worth it to continue at this point. So the decision to not continue on was at the suggestion of the mediator. And I will also tell you that notwithstanding that suggestion at that time, both the mediator as well as at least our side of the table believe that the mediation efforts will resume. It's just a matter of when, not if.
Oh, thank you.
All right.
Okay, thank you so much.
Anytime. Anybody else have any questions? Marilyn?
Even of course, I'm going to have a question.
I was actually hoping that you would have a question. I wouldn't feel like a meeting would be complete without a question.
Without hearing from the big mouth. Anyway, I think I'm confused about the PBGC coverage. I understood you to say you applied, it started in 2019, but you were able to go back also 2 years.
I was able to.
That?
Yes. So the day that I claimed, I'll put it this way, the day that I claimed under PBGC and ERISA regulations, you're allowed to ask for an acknowledgement that you were really looking to have coverage at a date earlier than the day you actually asked for it. And you can go back, I believe it's 2 years. Whatever the maximum time frame was for me to ask for retroactive application, I did the maximum. Just because I asked for it to be retroactive to, let's call it, August or April of 2017, doesn't mean the PBGC is going to use that as the date for the 5-year phase. And it doesn't even mean the date that I asked for, which was, call it, April 19, that they're going to use that. They may say the time clock didn't start running until mid 2020 or something like that. Because there is nothing in their regulations that talks about when that time frame becomes established for that 5-year phase in. And
Federal
according,
government at its best.
that's exactly right.
The second comment I have, thus the diocese is delaying. Do they know that you've applied for PBGC?
Yeah, everybody does. I did that way back, and I put that in when I did it. I reported it to the Superior Court in one of my reports, and it's come up periodically in connection with other discussions that we did make the election, and that we are in that. We believe we are in that 5-year phase-in period at this point in time, but that we've gotten no determination one way or the other by the PBGC.
So is it possible that this is the reason why the diocese is delaying? Because once PBGC takes over, will they be off the hook?
No. If PBGC, I'll give you two answers on that. If PBGC takes over, PBGC then also becomes the assignee of the claims that we have against the diocese, and they would have the ability to pursue those to try to recoup monies themselves.
Oh, I do remember that.
But by not taking any position on this plan at this time, the PBGC is essentially, although they haven't literally said this to us, that I believe that they are essentially saying, go finish your litigation. We don't want to take on the cost of litigation against the diocese or anybody else. You do it. And then once you've collected everything you can collect, then come back to us. We're not going to do anything until the litigation is over, so that we know exactly what the status of this plan is in terms of its financial viability and years and everything else. So if the diocese is sitting there saying, well, we're just going to wait for the PBGC to come in, I think it's unlikely for that to happen while the litigation is going on. And if it does, it's because the PBGC has made the determination that they want to pursue against the diocese, and they will take over the helm. They might actually, it is possible where they would say, we're going to take over. We are going to take an assignment of that claim against the diocese. But Wisto, Sheena, and Lovely, you're already 2 years, 3 years into it, whatever the case may be, keep going. We'll retain you to do it under the same terms as the receiver. So if the diocese is hoping that this just kind of goes away because the PBGC comes in, I think that's unlikely.
Okay, so we're in the middle of a catch-22. Basically, all of us pensioners are sitting here waiting for a couple of things to happen. The diocese to either agree to settle out of court or go to litigation, and PBGC to make up their mind. So we're sitting in the middle.
Yeah, we're sitting
correct?
in a holding pattern for both, where in essence, we have two airports we could be directed to land, and both are telling us to sit in a holding pattern right now. Luckily, we've got enough fuel to circle for a while, and we will control ultimately whether or not we fly to one airport or the other. It's just a matter of how things go. I think the diocese, the litigation is moving forward, albeit it moves forward at a slow pace. It is moving forward. It's not like that case is stalled or the pause button. The judge actually, we did have, you guys might recall, there was a motion for summary judgment regarding the date of this plan when Prospect was in. The diocese sat back and they did not take any position on that issue. That was a fight between us and Prospect. Then when we settled with Prospect, the diocese said, oh, well, now we want to take a position on that. And we wanted to withdraw our papers on it. The judge allowed us to withdraw so that the diocese couldn't rely on the arguments between the receiver and Prospect, or the plaintiffs and Prospect. because the settlement had happened and had rendered that argument moot. So the judge said, I'm granting the plaintiff's motion, our motion, to withdraw everything. And diocese, if you want to apply for summary judgment, you got to file your own motion to do it now, which is what happened. So the litigation is moving on, and there have been things that have been going on, but it's nothing that's too exciting, and it's nothing that's at this point has any short-term prospect of money coming in the door through that litigation.
Sounds like we, as you suggested, the lawyers that are representing the three sections of this, of the pensioners, we need to get with them and get out to the media and let them know. A lot of people in the general public think this is all settled.
No, I know.
And when I've been asked the question and I tell people, no, it's not finished, they're like, well, the media said it was. So sounds like we need to do another media campaign.
Well, I will tell you, I did meet with Arlene, Chris, and Jeff, along with Max Wistow, I believe it. Let's say it was last week, just to give them an update on everything that's going on. And they did make the comment, although, like I said, I kind of have that I don't want to know about it mentality on it, but they did make the comment that they believe that they need to start banging the drum a little bit more again on this. So if you do reach out, there may be plans in the works already that like I said, I'm not aware of, but they did mention that they were going to do something.
I was just going to say something, but I think I better keep my mouth shut.
Yeah, this is recorded.
Yeah, right. Thank you, Stephen.
Anytime, Marilyn. Anybody else have any questions? Karen Dean, I see a hand. If you can unmute yourself, there you go.
How's that?
Yep.
How you doing?
Good,
I'm
how are
Don
you?
Kilduff. My mother's in the plan and I'm her power attorney. And watching this, I've watched it from the start where all our elected leaders were right up on their podium saying how they wanted to see this settled and everyone get together and do the best they could. And to Marilyn's point today, where you hear from none of them about it, and basically they felt it was like a third rail for them if they didn't want to cross the churches and get the wrath of the church on them, and yet keep their jobs and their public life. They were going to walk down the middle and pretty much just let it die out, which they've done. So, my suggestion is that we get back on these people that are supposed to be working for us to solve these problems, to let them know what's going on. And while the church is pumping money into lobbyists, while they're spending a fortune out there making sure that this doesn't go anywhere, and they're also standing in line collecting COVID money to kind of pay their bills and keep things going. And a lot of the public doesn't hear this. And I think the church is very happy to keep this out of the limelight and out of the news, and they're very comfortable with what's going on. And I don't think it'll change until the people that are still affected get together and make a concerted effort to make sure that this doesn't fall between the cracks. And I think somebody should step up and form a committee and make sure that this takes off and get this done, because they're happy to sit back and let nothing happen. And they've proved it, and they're going to do it until, like I said, this goes on forever and ever, and it'll never end. And that's my belief. So
Well,
that's mine in a nutshell.
I don't disagree with you. I think contacting your respective state reps and senators certainly doesn't hurt in terms of putting that type of political pressure. And like I said, Arlene Violet, Chris Kalachi, and Jeff Castle are the three attorneys that are representing. It's more than, I think it's more than 60% of you. And they are working collectively to make sure that they stay up to date and combine efforts to make sure. So I don't know if you're part of one of those groups or if your mom was part of one of those groups.
No,
But it certainly wouldn't hurt for you to probably, from the sound of it, it sounds like you might be fall in the criteria of Arlene's group. And it might be a good idea to contact Arlene and see what her plan is, what her thoughts are on it, because Arlene is very smart and she is not shy.
Yep.
And she's going to do what she has to do.
Mhm.
And like I said, I gave her and the others an update last week, so she is freshly updated, and I could tell in my meeting with her that her vigor has not died at all. She's just as annoyed and upset by this as ever, if not more so now, because now it is just the diocese.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Sure. Anybody else?
So I have a question.
Go ahead.
So I don't want to sound stupid or ignorant, but when we became an ERISA plan, weren't we determined at that point not to be a church plan? Aren't we already considered not a church plan any longer?
Well, that's the position that I take, although we have not gotten that determination from the federal government yet. But I did make, under ERISA, a church plan, an exempt plan, has the right to say, I want to be governed by ERISA. I want all of the good and the bad that ERISA has, all the reporting requirements, all the minimum funding requirements, everything. And so I made the election to do so. As far as I'm concerned, that is conclusive that as of that date, at a minimum as of that date, this plan ceased being a non-ERISA church plan. It's still technically, I guess, it could be considered an electing church plan, but I don't think it's a church plan at all. And like I said, to avoid any doubt, I made the election saying, if it is a church plan, I'm electing to not be treated like one anymore. So those are all legal arguments, as in terms of whether or not it is right now, or if it was one before, or if it was one when I made the election. I could tell you what I just did tell you what my position is. It's just a matter of whether or not I believe it's the IRS that has to make that determination. They do a letter of designation letter, and if not, for the court to do it. So I made the election. I did everything that I could under the regulations to say whether I'm a church plan or not, I want to be covered. So if you think I'm a church plan, I want to be covered as an ERISA plan. If you don't think I'm a church plan, then I didn't have to do this. It was just some paperwork that I filed that was unnecessary. But I want to make sure that there's no doubt.
Okay, so if the money was given to consider us an ERISA plan, if the PBGC comes along later on and says, sorry, we've determined that you're a church plan and we're not going to get involved, does the money that you put towards them, does that come back to our?
That comes back. That comes back. Yeah, so we've been paying, think of, I mean, the PBGC is basically an insurer. So we've been paying premiums,
right,
on an annual basis since the election to be covered by the PBGC. If they come back and say, sorry, you never were, that was, you couldn't make the election, or whatever the case may be, they would have to reimburse us for the premiums that we paid.
And what sum of money is that?
I believe the premiums we've paid, and Julie, if you know the information off the top of your head, correct me. I believe it's been just shy of about $2 million a year. So we've had to pay somewhere in the vicinity. It's based on a percentage of how much money is in the plan. So it changes every year. But it's ranged somewhere between 1.5 and 1.8 million over the past 3 years.
Okay. I just want to say one thing. I agree with, something needs to be done to make the public aware again of what's going on. I just want to say something probably should have been done when the diocese announced that they had built a $13 million mausoleum that they're now looking to sell. I mean, we're not looking at, we don't know what the assets are right now, but if they had enough money to build a $13 million mausoleum and now are going to sell it for profit, like,
No,
shame
I
on them.
Yep. I hear you.
Okay. Thank
Thanks.
you.
Anybody else? I can't hear you.
Okay, so can you?
There you go.
Okay.
Are you
sorry,
eating
I-
something good?
Yep, you better believe
Good.
it. Well, I just had my breakfast. Now I'm having my supper,
Okay.
my lunch. I never had breakfast, lunch, or dinner. I just get out of work.
Yeah,
That's what happens when you're in the trenches of the COVID ER in Massachusetts.
yeah, that is not a good place to be
Oh,
right
it's ugly. It's ugly. Question. So we're getting like between like 1 to 10 million from the sister hospitals that are going to get resolved, correct?
Yep, once those things are closed, those funds will come to us, and my
Okay.
hope is that 100% of them will come to us.
When I was driving home, I heard 125 million. I didn't know, I missed that piece.
So all I was saying is that in the liquidating receivership of the legacy hospitals,
Yeah,
when we entered into the settlement with old St. Joe's and old Roger Williams way back in 2018, that they made a statement in there, an acknowledgement that the claim that the plan had against the legacy hospitals was no less than 125 million. So we have not had our claim determined yet by the court. We haven't filed a motion to approve the claim. We're working to get rid of other claimants to resolve those other claims that are there. But in the event that there is another claimant that is left over that should be getting a distribution, we've acknowledged, and the old hospitals acknowledged, that this plan is owed a minimum of $125 million from the old hospitals.
right.
So
That's in
what that was.
favor. That's our favor. That's in favor of us?
That's in favor of us.
Okay.
All
I
right?
forgot how much we got from Prospect. How much did we get from Prospect when we settled with them? I forgot.
The Prospect Angel settlement was $30 million even.
That's okay. Okay. I got it. So we're not doing too bad. We're only, what, you said we're at 83 million.
83
And we're
million.
costing between 3 and 4 million a year to promote our benefits.
That's right.
So that's not bad. I think we started at 8 million, didn't we, in 2017?
We started just under, in August of 17, it was just under $87 million.
Right, okay. So I think we're doing good. You're doing a good job, Steve.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank
I'm
you. Tell Max
fine.
we said hello, by the way. We miss him too.
I will, but by you telling me that means I have to call him. So I will call him and I will tell him.
Yeah, we miss him. He's a sweetheart.
All
Can't
right.
wait to go to court with you, sit in that front seat.
I know, it's been a while. It's been
Oh,
a
yeah.
while since anybody's been in court.
I know. Carol and I haven't come in a while. Yeah,
Yeah. Well, there haven't been any in-person hearings.
right. I know.
So
Hopefully,
those are
keep our
fun.
fingers crossed.
Yep.
Thank
All
you
right.
very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Stephen, could you acknowledge the pension fund balance currently?
The pension fund balance, I said at the beginning, is north of 83 million. It's between 83 and 84 million right now.
Thank you.
Sure. Any other questions? I don't see anybody asking for anything. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say goodnight to everybody. Thank you for joining. Happy New Year to everybody. I hope everybody continues to stay safe and healthy. And we will set another one of these up for about 60 days out. All right. Talk to everybody soon. Obviously, if you have any questions, you can email Julie or I, and motion. Julie and I will look into the issue that you raised.